Welcome back to PedalBox, and it's the day that so many people have been waiting for, ourselves included. People keep asking us, when are we finally going to turn the key on this thing? And today we plug an ECU in, and if we don't blow it up, we might actually have a go at cranking this engine over. If you've been watching a while, or if you've met us at any of the shows that we've been to, you may have asked us why we haven't run the engine yet, and we will probably have told you because we blew up our ECU. Now, we know we blew it up somehow because we actually have both driven the car that we pulled this engine out of. It belonged to a friend of ours, a guy called Sean. So we know that the ECU, at least before we pulled it out of that engine bay, was good. So unfortunately, we've cooked it somehow. We've genuinely no idea how. This doesn't make any sense to me, but like everyone I've spoken to has said that it's probably something to do with having had it connected to the engine and therefore the chassis while we were welding, and something that just kills them. It's a bit weird, but that's the only excuse we've ever heard, so we're rolling with it. Anyway, we've got this new one here. We've got this from Nick up at Decimal Tenths up north. He's kindly taken the immobiliser off it for us, so hopefully we shouldn't have any bothers getting it working on the car, and we're going to try and plug it in and boot it up today. Now, we are still a little bit worried about our wiring, if we've got 12 volts going anywhere we shouldn't, or things like that. So rather than just plug it into the battery, which is a basically unlimited, very, very high current 12 volt source, we're going to bring it up carefully on a benchtop power supply with controlled the current. We're just going to bring it up slowly, and see if everything looks good. It's still not super scientific, because we're not going to know if 12 volts is going the right places in here, but hopefully it'll give us a bit of an indication if anything is drawing, like, you know, trying to draw 10 amps at really low voltage or anything horrible like that. So with any luck, that might protect us a bit, and we should hopefully be able to get the car booted up. We've got the power supply set up now. It's not set to 12 volts because it has a bunch of capacitors in the output to kind of smooth it. And if there is anything wrong, those capacitors are just going to dump 12 volts into anything they hit with basically no current control. So I've dropped the voltage right down. We're at 2 volts with a 1 amp limit, which is not nearly enough to turn the car on, but it should be enough to just see some kinds of failure mode, and we'll just slowly bring it up. Now that that's ready, we're just going to plug in these 2 ring terminals that we've got on the end of our funky little adapter wire here. That's going to be a bit of fun because they have to go all the way down in the bottom corner there. So it gives a couple of minutes and we'll see what this looks like. Well, we're all plugged in, and we've cautiously brought the power supply up with the ECU still disconnected and the key out of the ignition, just to see if there's anything horribly wrong. And I'm pleased to say that even when I do a full sweep all the way up to 12 volts, we see absolutely no current draw out of the supply at all. So for now at least, everything seems pretty good, which means we can start slowly bringing more stuff online. We'll do a few more sweeps up to 12 volts and see how everything behaves. I think Adrian's got the key in now, so we're still at 2 volts. If you want to bring it round to accessory, Aid? That's P2. Yeah, so I'm seeing a little bit of current, but you'd kind of expect something. And as I come up 5 volts, 6 volts, up to 12 volts, and I've got about 1/4 of an amp, which is probably kind of enough to, I don't know, maybe energize the computers in the back of the dashboard or something.
Some relays ticking.
Yeah, there's a couple of relays ticking, Aid was just saying, but nothing much really happening. And yeah, 1/4 of an amp out of the supply, so that all seems fine. We'll bring the voltage back down now. Let the capacitors drain, which happened pretty quick because there was a little bit of load there. And now we can try having it on run, and we'll bring it up again.
That's run.
Cool. Weirdly, I'm actually seeing less load now. I'm at like 15 milliamps. Huh. But either way, no dead shorts. I'm not seeing the thing going straight to 10 amps or anything, so that all seems okay. So yeah, if any electricity is going anywhere it shouldn't be, it's not going there in massive quantities, so we're probably okay. So now the really scary moment of plugging in our new ECU. So we were a little bit confused when we tried bringing the car up to P2 while the power supply was charged up. The dashboard didn't light up, and then we remembered we hadn't actually plugged it in. We just kind of set it there for the shows that we've been to recently. So we're just going to plug that back in and bring her up a second time. So we've got that all reconnected now, so I'm going to bring the power supply back up. We're going to give Aid a nice healthy 12 volts into there. So that's all on. And we have a dashboard. Well, we've got some warning lights. and a very annoying beeper. Nothing horrible here, and we're seeing just under an amp coming out of the power supply. Yep. Which is, yeah, it's kind of in the sort of territory I'd expect for energizing an instrument cluster. That seems reasonable. Right, we're all plugged in the dash. We've tested that the dashboard works. We've got the ECU connected now, which means it's finally time to bring this thing up 1 volt at a time and see what happens. So let's start feeding the voltage in. I've still got a 1 amp current limit set, so if anything starts drawing a bunch of power, like if the injector amplifier starts to come on or something, that might kill it, but we shall see. 5 volts, 6, 10, 12. Yeah, nothing horrible happening. We've only got a couple of tens of milliamps going through, which is a pretty sane, reasonable sort of number. Hey, do you want to give me P1?
P1.
Nothing happened.
P2.
And P2, we've got about 600 milliamp, which is a fairly... Oh, and there we go. There's our current protection. So that is only a 1 amp limit. So that's not a it's not a particular worry. Let's allow it 2 amps.
Okay, going back around, starting over again. P2.
Cool. Oh, it's actually that buzzer is what brings the current demand up enough to hit the current limit. Because that's quite a loud little beeper. But yeah, we're sitting at, just under an amp when that beeper goes off. I can't remember exactly what that's complaining about. I think it's the immobilizer. When that beeper goes off, we come just over an amp. But this all seems fairly reasonable. I would say to try and crank it, but with no battery in and with just this little supply, it obviously won't do anything. So yeah, to the extent that we can tell, this feels like a success. The ECU hasn't burst into flame. I haven't seen a short on the power supply. So I think for now, the only real next step is hooking a real battery on and trying to crank it. We haven't got fuel supply sorted out yet. We haven't fully gone through our fuel lines and cleaned them and everything and leak tested them. So we haven't got petrol in there. The engine's probably low on oil and everything. So we certainly won't be running it. But if we can just get it to crank, that might be interesting.
So the first thing on the list we attempted to test didn't work. And it's something that we know worked beforehand, but I haven't tested since I redid all of the lights around the number plate. So this is probably on me. The light on this side didn't flash, took the bulb out, checked it in the other side, absolutely perfect. So we know it's not the bulb at fault. We've checked the wires to see if there's a plug problem, absolutely fine. Interestingly, the number plate lights flash out of phase with the indicators and the hazards when they're going. So that is indicative of a much bigger problem. So now we're stripping everything back and starting over again, because it's just easier than trying to diagnose the problem, is just make it right from the beginning. Because we've got power, we can throw it into all of the lights and just make sure the circuit works properly. But yeah, an inauspicious start to let's make sure everything that worked before works again, because it already doesn't. So first step, we need to figure out what wire does what. At least we know what ground is, because we've already checked that one before when we made sure that the indicator worked. Now we have indicator, which on the lamp side is blue with a black stripe. Chris is just writing this down off camera.
So what are we doing? Indicator's blue with black.
Indicator is blue with black, and that works fine. Judging by the size of the cable, I expect this one to be brake lights, although the cable coming in is significantly bigger than the one coming out, never mind. So this is green with yellow. Yeah, green with yellow is brake light, and yellow with black is rear light. So now we just need to find the same things on the car side of the loom when we energize it from that end.
Okay, it has now been 2 hours, which is a lot longer than we expected to take to figure out which pins on the back of that bundle were the various different lights. Unfortunately, it turned out none of them appeared to be electrically connected to our brake light switch. Obviously what we're doing, trying to go through the wires that we had back there and say, okay, well, this one is ground, this one's coming on with the indicators, this one's our brake light, this one's tail, so that we could repin them all properly. And when we tried looking for continuity to our brake light switch, which is obviously the trigger that lights the bulbs up, we couldn't find any. We have since discovered, after lots and lots of looking through wiring diagrams, probing the back of the fuse box, all sorts of stuff, we've worked out the problem is actually that the wire that runs forward from the brake light down the side of our car, down through this bundle here, and into the instrument cluster and this whole area here, we just kind of cut it and didn't connect it to anything. There's just like a bare wire end in behind the dashboard. So we've now figured out what went wrong there. Unfortunately, in figuring this out, I've cut a few other wires that we've now got to reconnect and resplice. But we have at least figured out what's going on. Unfortunately, it got kind of bad. I mean, this is not where you normally expect your tail light wiring loom to be. The fact that it's outside the rear quarter panel is kind of a sign of how desperate we've got. So we've fully unbundled like all of the wiring down here. This has been a properly miserable job, but finally we can get it back together properly and hopefully figure out what that other wire that I cut while doing this was, because that might suck. Well, fast forward one more hour, we've got our new brake light wire in. We've just completely replaced the old one and all the joins and everything that were in it. We had enough of the right size and right colour wire to just do the whole thing. So we've got a new wire in, we've pulled the old one out, and I've replaced whatever it was that I split earlier. I did try tracing it back to figure out what I might have broken, but it disappears into the engine bay, and we kind of couldn't be bothered figuring out what happened from there. So now, hopefully, when I put my fake brake pedal across my brake light switch, we should now see faults on the multimeter, and we do. Awesome. Well, day 2, unfortunately, has been a little bit of a mixed bag. We found just so much stuff wrong with the tail light wiring, and we couldn't tell at the time whether it was like the last 6 inches where it all kind of swapped around to go into the new bulb, into the new lamps, or if it was elsewhere in the loom. So we took the lamp units away and just tried to make sure that we at least had 12 volts appearing in wires at the back when we expected to. So we had to hotwire a few bits and pieces. We don't actually have a working reverse switch at the minute because our shifter's a bit funky. We don't have a working brake pedal switch at the minute. There's a couple of other bits and pieces like that. But we were at least able to tell that when we hotwired the switches, just in the connectors, we did get 12 volts in the right places. So we know our hazards are good, we know our rear fogs are good, we know our reversing lights are good. Unfortunately, almost every other kind of lighting, including, weirdly, the indicators, seem to be broken. Now, there is, thankfully, a good reason for that. It turns out we just don't have Relay 393 plugged in our panel at the front here. For any not VW people, VW call it a lamp control unit. It's basically what handles a whole bunch of like headlighty things and parking lights and stuff like that. But because we don't have it in, and we can't find it in our garage, we've put it somewhere very, very safe. We're a little bit stuffed on testing all that stuff. And that did at least leave us with a whole day to do whatever we needed, which we didn't really know what that was at the start. So we've been through our dash and tested most of the functions in there, and honestly, most of it seems to work pretty well. There's some things we can't test, obviously. We can't test coolant temperature sensors because we can't run the engine and get that up to temp. Fuel gauge just seems a bit weird. We're not quite sure how the sender works on that, so that's another problem. But we have got to a point where we're a bit confused on the immobilizer, which is still blinking at us, which is a bit weird because it apparently doesn't exist anymore. And the ABS light is on, which in fairness is reasonable. We probably just need to do an ABS delete on the ECU, and we should be good there. We also got started testing controls in the cockpit, going through all the stalks, making sure all that stuff worked. Wipers seem to mostly behave correctly, but there is a nuance. Unfortunately, although the wiring and the relay control and everything is absolutely perfect, the only way the wipers work is if we disconnect the smart wipers and plug in VW Audi wipers. For whatever reason, we're not entirely sure how like the control system works in them. Obviously, when you go to intermittent, they have to like run a full cycle, and there's going to be, you know, a little bit of logic in there, probably mechanical, but whatever it is, the way the smart one works is not like fundamentally compatible with the VW system. We can't like just like repin things and get a working system. Thankfully, it looks like we can keep the smart wiper mechanism that gives us these nice like outside-in wipers that we've already spent so much effort installing, and we can just remove the motor and gearbox assembly, which is what contains the intermittent behavior and everything like that, and just put the VW one back in the same place, driving the smart mechanism. So that's quite nice. That seems pretty promising. We've run the thing up and it behaves right. It's just the mechanical question left. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a problem testing our reverse light, and that is we can't test the reverse switch because our shifter doesn't work. It turns out where we've got the threaded ends coming off of our shifter cables that we had made up ages ago, where they go into, there's like a threaded holder that actually mounts onto the gearbox. Those two things just slip, so the rods can't actually actuate the shifter tower anymore. Little bit of a problem, not the end of the world though. The threaded end still looks decent, so we can thread on a new Heim joint at the end and attach it to the tower. The catch is, it does require drilling and modification of the tower itself, which is basically a gearbox out job, which means the engine's got to come out again, which, considering how much effort we've just spent wiring all of it, is kind of a pain. Well, all in all, not quite the day we were hoping for. We do have a couple of little problems outstanding. I was really hoping, I might have been a little optimistic on this one, but I was really hoping to end with a clip of us cranking the engine over. Not firing it, we haven't got oil in there, as far as we know. We definitely haven't got fuel, and we certainly haven't got coolants. There's a whole bunch of things that stop us from running it, but I was really hoping to crank it. Unfortunately, in the dash, we have an oil warning. We're not entirely sure what the warning is, if it's a broken sensor or a lack of oil or who knows what. We've also got a missing 4-pin connector somewhere on the engine. We've got a little 4-pin coming off the engine that we can't find the matching connector for coming in from the car. We've decided, all in all, even by our standards, it would probably be a bit stupid to try and start the thing, because God only knows what could end up happening. On the bright side though, we have validated a lot of our lights work, a lot of our wiring works, a lot of our systems and accessories all work. We've got a good plan for sorting out our wipers, which is great because that's a can that we've been kicking down the road for, Christ, probably about 4 years or so now. It's just wonderful to finally have an end in sight on that one. And there's just a bunch of little, really like annoying fiddly bits that we've dealt with. So this is actually, in all, probably not too bad of a day, just not quite the same kind of good that I was hoping for. But if you do want to be here for the day that we get this thing running, or at least crank it over and get that nice money shot of the engine finally turning for the first time, do remember, subscribe to the channel down below, ring the notification bell. If you've got any ideas on how we might solve some of these problems, especially around the fuel sender, we genuinely cannot work out what resistor or like what range of resistances and stuff is supposed to be on that thing. If you know how to wire one of these fuel senders, genuinely please let us know, because we're totally stuffed. Thanks again to our long-suffering patrons. We know that you guys really want to see this thing running, really want to see it firing. So do we. Probably not quite as much as you guys, but we really do appreciate all the support. Not quite all of the money is in the car yet. We do have some that we're putting aside for a nice carbon splitter to replace that horrible plywood one that fell apart over winter. But every penny we get is so appreciated. It makes this whole build so much easier for us to justify, like buying parts for and things like that. Our parts hoard at this point that we've taken from parted out cars is disgusting, and it's just difficult to find stuff. So being able to buy stuff when we need to is really awesome. We massively value the support. Or you can support us directly through shop.pedalbox.show by buying hats, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, all that sort of fun stuff, including this one from there. That's all for this time, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time.